I guess, after art school, very rarely do you have opportunities to sit in a forum of other artists and peers who you may have actually gone through years of creating work with, and actually be in an environment where you can talk about your ideas and what you want your practice to be like. And with rounds, we specifically set up group meetings after every single round where we would go around and share what work we'd made and also how we responded to the artists. So it was never very secretive about what you were making through the whole time. It was quite an open process, and that was a decision on our behalf because we wanted to create a very open dialogue.
The structure of rounds has been interesting, and an interesting way an interesting device to generate works, and at the same time it's very tricky in being given something that's someone else's and then having a certain responsibility to add on to that idea or to explore that idea. I found very early on in the rounds process that the best way for me to tackle that issue was to look at the work and see how it related to my practice. So rather than trying to make my practice fit into the work, it was looking at certain things that I thought were interesting or had value to me as a practitioner, and then using that as a way to problem solve of how you were going to make a work in response to that.
My fourth round, which was Field Prototype 1, is actually it's a foosball table that's been rendered musical. The idea came from Elise and Jürgen, who had created a record player which was playing Symphony Fantastic by Berlioz. Instead of one needle, they had put 4 needles, so it was playing the record at 4 different times simultaneously. When I first saw the record player, I thought, there's nothing different about this. What are they trying to do here? And it wasn't until they plugged it in I realised that you had to go very close to hear the record in various places, and there was a really beautiful kind of symphony of scratches and blank moments, and it was really quite beautiful. So I responded by also using a ready-made object and changing various elements of it to create something kind of new. And the idea was to take away each of the players on the foosball table and replace them with tuning forks, which were then amplified. So the idea of something that you do have to be quite intimate to hear, I had amplified that. So the participants, play the game of foosball, and at the same time they're creating music reciprocally.
I think it's made me a lot more receptive to the ways that other people work. I think before I surrounded myself with people that worked in a similar way that I did, and this project not having any curatorial control over it, I suppose. It's the first time that I haven't been kind of involved in that aspect of an exhibition, and just being one of the artists, it kind of opened me up to being pushed around a little bit more, and I found it a lot more challenging than I have in the past, having to respond to people that have a very, very, very different way of making art that I do. But I think the outcomes that have resulted from all of those interactions with other people will probably propel my practice forward and maybe forge, hopefully, some new collaborations with other people that do work in a different way to me.
Rounds has actually been a twofold project, part exhibition, part book. In January, beginning of this year, 8 WA writers were invited to pair up with one of the artists in Rounds and undertake quite a critical investigation into the artist's practice. There were studio visits, numerous interviews that were taking place. The Rounds publication, which comes out on August 13th, is a behind-the-scenes account of Rounds, as well as insight into the artist's practice. This is quite a rare opportunity for an artist who is at an emerging stage in their career to have someone who has come from a background in PhDs in critical theory, or who writes for publications like Art in Australia, to have an in-depth insight into their practice. For some of the artists, this has been at the apex of the Rounds project because it's forced them to consider things about their practice they may not have seen before.
It's been nice to be part of a process which has given me a lot of response and feedback in terms of my own practice, and to also sustain other people's practices in terms of being able to give them feedback and critique and all that sort of thing. So being part of a creative community in this way has been really rewarding. In the same time, apart from the exhibition, being part of the publication and having the chance to work with a writer who addresses your practice's concerns and all that sort of stuff quite in depth has been really rewarding, and to be part of such a big publication is really nice as an emerging artist to be involved in that.
I'm not sure if it's changed me as an artist. I mean, it's I guess a good way to look at your practice from a different point of view. When because I think you tend to make things in a certain way, or you might respond to making work in your own way or something. So being forced to be a part of something which had quite specific boundaries sort of forces you to look at and outside that. So I guess it's more of a way of giving you sort of a different perspective on your own practice, I thought of it as, rather than being maybe necessarily like a really changing thing.
It's just been quite interesting. I think the thing that probably really settled in afterwards was that I don't think any of us understand each other, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, it's been a very interesting process. Yeah.
The reason I make work is to point at things that interest me, and if that interests other people, then that's fantastic. And I suppose it's a concentration on things that might be overlooked for me by other people. So if I can kind of change people's perception of a particular aspect of something that's going on around them, then I've probably done my job.
The whole way through rounds, it's been very fluid, and at various points along the way, I have thought of like, oh, this is what the end point will be, or this is what I'm trying to say, and I think it wasn't until the opening when I saw everyone in the space interacting with the works, and there was just an immense joy through everyone. And I guess one thing that I wanted to bring forth again with art was, to have fun and to experiment and to play around with ideas, and I think there's something really refreshing and very human about that.